So today we're going to be making homemade sugared donuts, including a vanilla custard filling from scratch. To start we need to make the dough. Combine 3 grams of dry active yeast to the bowl and pouring 75 grams of lukewarm water. This recipe makes roughly 8 to 10 donuts but can be doubled quite easily. Give the mixture a stir and leave to bloom for about 15 minutes. Meanwhile, take your mixer and fit the paddle attachment. Normally with a dough recipe you would use a dough hook to knead, but we're going to be adding butter at a later stage and the paddle attachment is better for incorporating. Take your mixing bowl and sieve in 250 grams of strong white bread flour. To that add 5 grams of fine sea salt and 30 grams of caster sugar. And now for the key ingredient. We're going to grate in the zest of 1 lemon. When these are fried, the lemon really comes through and stops the donuts from being too claggy and sickly. Give the ingredients a quick stir to combine. Next, pour your yeast mixture into the bowl, making sure to get any yeast that clings to the side. Add 2 eggs to the mixture. If you're feeling confident and want to show off for the camera, then try to crack the egg in with one hand like that. Then simply repeat for this egg. Moving on. Once you've turned the camera off and fished out any remnants of eggshell, turn the mixer on at a medium-high speed. Leave to mix for 6 to 8 minutes, scraping down the sides where necessary. Continue until the dough has come together and the gluten has developed. Next we're going to slowly start adding butter to the dough. Turn your mixer back on and add 65 grams of softened unsalted butter a little at a time. Remember not to add it all at once, otherwise the dough won't absorb the butter as quickly. The butter will turn this into something similar to a brioche dough, which will taste great when it's fried. You'll be surprised how much butter the dough can absorb at this stage. Once all the butter is incorporated, mix the dough on a high speed for a couple of minutes, until the dough is glossy, smooth and elastic. When you can stretch it thin enough to see light through it, you know the gluten has developed enough and the dough is finished kneading. Scrape down the sides and then next we need to leave the dough to prove until it has doubled in size. Take the dough out the mixer to shape. At this stage the dough is going to be really stretchy and easy to handle. Fold the dough over itself a couple of times and then shape it into a ball by putting it on an unfloured surface and dragging it towards you. Place in a bowl and cover with cling film or a shower cap. The proving can take anywhere between 3 to 4 hours depending on how warm your kitchen is. Alternatively, the dough can be put in the fridge overnight at this stage and left for up to 48 hours until you're ready to make. Next we're going to make the custard filling, and to start get a pan and pour in 500 milliliters of whole milk as well as a drizzle of vanilla extract. Give the mixture a stir and bring to a simmer on a medium heat, stirring occasionally. We then need to separate the eggs, for which I have 2 methods. Method 1 involves cracking an egg in half and then pouring the yolk from one shell to the other until you've gotten rid of all of the egg whites. As you can see, it's quite tedious, for me generally results in the yolk cracking at some point. My second method, which is my preferred method for separating yolks, is a lot quicker, especially if you have loads to do. Simply crack the required number of eggs, in this case 6, into a bowl and then with your hands gently fish out the yolks, leaving the whites behind. This has the added advantage that any little bits of shell can be left behind rather than ending up in your final custard. Whisk together the eggs with a fork and then pour in 90 grams of caster sugar. Give the mixture another stir until it's all combined and then sift in 40 grams of plain flour. The flour helps to make the custard nice and thick, which is how we want it. We're going to mix in some whipped cream later, so you're going to want to make the custard thicker than you'd normally have it. Mix in the flour. We're going to sieve the final mixture anyway, so don't worry too much about lumps at this stage. When you work out the bowl isn't big enough for the mixture, transfer it into a larger one. Now, once the milk has reached a boil, pour it into the egg mixture slowly. If you do this too quickly, the eggs will scramble. It's important to whisk constantly at this early stage. Pour the custard back into the pan used to heat the milk, and then heat gently whilst whisking constantly until the mixture starts to thicken. We want to take this to the point where it almost seems too thick and coats the back of a spoon. Give it a taste and see if it needs some more vanilla extract. Sieve the custard into a storage container, pushing through with the back of a spoon. Now we're going to cool the custard down so we can use it later. A little trick is to take some cling film and push it down so it touches the custard, which will minimise any skin formation. Put a lid on the mixture and leave in the fridge to cool until you're ready to use it. Once your dough has doubled in size, tip it out onto a dusted work surface. I find a dough scraper is helpful getting out the bowl. Remember to scrape up any leftover bits. Flour your hands on the top of the dough to ensure it doesn't stick. You want to be careful not to introduce too much flour into the dough at this stage, as it can dry out your dough too much. Now, we're going to divide the dough into individual balls. Whilst this can be done by hand, I find it much easier to weigh the balls out so you end up with consistent donuts. Use a knife or a dough scraper, cut off a chunk of the dough. For this recipe we want the little fellas to weigh about 50 grams each. Close enough. If they're too light you can add a bit more to get up to 50 grams and then squidgle the pieces together. I always find I end up with a final ball of odds and ends, resisting the urge to throw away this imperfect specimen, fry it up and use it as a taster. Next we need to shape the dough into balls which will help them rise more evenly. Similarly to the original ball of dough, start by folding each one over itself a few times, then instead of dragging it on the work surface try to introduce a source of friction with your own hands, and continue to tuck the dough underneath itself. Repeat until all the balls are shaped and resting on a tray or mat, preferably non-stick, and then cover with a tea towel to prove again. Leave until they are visibly bigger, normally around 2 or 3 hours. Now, heat up some vegetable or sunflower oil in a high rim pan or deep fat fryer if you own one. We want to heat the oil until it reaches 180 degrees Celsius. Close enough. Now, we want to set up a little conveyor belt for the donuts, with some paper towel to dry off any excess oil and then a bowl of sugar to coat them. Finally, we have a rack for them to cool on. Take your first dough ball and drop it into the oil, then fry for 2 minutes on each side in between. Once the donut is golden brown on both sides, drain and then coat with sugar. Now repeat in batches of 2 or 3, ensuring not to overfill the pan and try to maintain a constant temperature. Remember, if you overfill the pan, the oil will cool and the donuts won't cook properly. Once all the donuts are fried and left to cool, we can move on to the custard filling. Now we need to get the filling ready. Start by whipping on a medium-high speed 125 millilitres of double cream. Keep whisking past the soft peaks phase until you get to a really thick whipped cream like this. Pour in your chilled custard and start to fold in. Keep folding until all the visible lumps have disappeared. Pour the final custard into a jug to make it easier to get it into the donut filler. If you don't have one of these, there'll be a link in the description, or alternatively a piping bag with a long nozzle will do the trick. Pour the custard in, ensuring the end is covered. Now take your donut, jab a hole in it and push some filling into it, being careful not to overfill. Now you've learned how to make custard donuts, be sure to like and subscribe to see some future videos.